So I'm very interested, obviously, in how this whole project came about, how it came to be. I mean, obviously you have to go back in time now, 24 years, because it was a very painstaking process. So that's where I wanted to kind of start tonight's discussion. How did well, I have a little bit of idea, obviously, about how the project came about, but how Jimmy and the production company, Gaslight, Stephen and Jim, two friends of mine, how they went about the whole process, and then how did it come to be? Obviously, how did it come to end up on the screen the way it is? And obviously, these two people who have here, we haven't got actors here. Obviously, we've got the real people, so it's a very unique opportunity to hear, directly from them what it was like to be involved in this whole process of telling the story and uncovering the truth and excavating the truth of Bloody Sunday, which of course at that stage 20 years ago, people have been waiting for 30 years for the Derry, the Derry side of the story to be properly told. So that's a very long-winded question, of course, Jimmy. You never get short questions from me, but yeah, I think it would be good just to sort of talk a little bit about, Jimmy, about just, to me it seems like an enormous challenge to do what you did here. So how do you go about, taking on a challenge like telling the story of Bloody Sunday, the counter narrative, against the British narrative?
Um, I was approached by Stephen Gargan, I think. It was at Belfast. I think it was over there. And I said to him, you can stuff it. I taught a British soldier who was murdered by the IRA. You think I'm going to go over there, and this is. I was stupid, I know, but that was my first reaction, And I came over here then, didn't I? And I participated in the march and met loads of people, loads of wonderful people, people who brothers and sisters had been murdered, whose parents had been murdered by the army, and they were so forgiving, absolutely amazing people. And then, of course, after a wee while, I realised my attitude about the story was it should be told by an Irish person. Of course, it should, But then I realised it was Irish pain and suffering, but it was a tragedy for Britain. It was a British tragedy because we set about to attack the possibility of a resurgent Irish Republican movement. And in attacking that Irish Republican movement, we brought it about with even more ferocity than we ever envisaged. It was a British tragedy, Irish pain and suffering and grief, but a British tragedy. And I think that's how we first started off, wasn't it, Stephen? I think.
Do you want to say something, Stephen? What were your objectives really in the whole project?
Yeah. Well, myself and Jim Keys, we would have been working with the Bloody Sunday family relatives for quite a few years before that. And we thought it would be interesting if we could make a film about the events of Bloody Sunday, because we thought, how do we take a local story to an international audience? Because we felt the story of Bloody Sunday has a universal kind of resonance. There's been Bloody Sundays in Palestine and Iraq and so on. So we felt it had the capacity to kind of reach an international audience. And then Jimmy's work with the Hillsborough families and his making of the film Hillsborough actually presented us with a potential model how we might work with the Bloody Sunday families. And then that conversation really, I asked Jimmy to come to Derry to meet the families, to experience Derry, to meet the people. And he went away, and I think maybe after a week or two, I think we spoke, and you had time to reflect, and at that point you thought, okay, let's take this on. So once we had you on board as the writer, we got permission from the relatives to proceed, and we put a proposal into Channel 4 television for development money to develop a script. So say some more.
Yeah, and just the particular approach then, Jimmy, because I know obviously you had a lot to find out and uncover and discover, because it wasn't, you weren't going to just take it out of a book. You wanted to hear from the lips of the people who experienced it. So this is obviously how you came to know Leo and Geraldine and obviously a lot of other people in Derry.
Yeah, that was crucial to me. I think the process is even more important than the end product. And the process is you go to people's homes. You don't You don't make them come to you. You know, you go into people's homes and you eat and you drink with them, and anybody who wants to speak to you, you go to his or her home and you speak there. And the only thing I'm proud of in the whole thing was the way we conducted the research. I thought the way we conducted the research was very good, and I've got it. Even then, I had a tremendous fear of flying, but I was constantly flying backwards and forwards to Belfast, and then a car from Belfast up to Derry, and then going back about a week later and coming just dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And I don't know how long the research took, Stephen. I think the research took 3 years, yeah. And there was nothing wasted at all. It was just, it was an amazing experience, you know. And I actually learned so much. But the story I always tell is, I'm an old lefty, but I realised in researching this story, I realised I was a British patriot. I loved my country, you know. And so it made me think, how could I, an old lefty, you know, say I'm an English British patriot, you know? And I realised that it's an instinctive love of your country. You love your country instinctively because everything you know and love is there. Everything I know and love is on Merseyside in Britain, you know. My family, my friends, the parks, the football club, the pubs, you know, everything I know and love is there. So it's instinctive. But when you instinctively love your country, you want your country to act in the best way possible. And when your country turns around and murders 14 people on their own streets, they are kicking the love of your country back into your face, you know. And I think in those circumstances, the true patriot stands up and attacks and criticizes his country, the place he loves, you know. True patriots are very quick to criticize, and they should always be, you know.
And what was it like to go into the homes really here in Derry? I know that seems a very sort of you know, the wee question, but I'm thinking about it from the point of view of Leo and Geraldine as well too, because obviously you are still hurting, you know, and then this writer turns up, you know, wanting to tell your story. So, like, what was that like?
Hello. Well, to be honest, I should have played the part because I was better looking than. But anyway, as it transpired, it was a shock because it was you were only telling us, relating what happened, and through the years, sitting up there at the back, it was as raw as if it happened yesterday, you know. And I thought that Jimmy and them all done a great tribute to the people of Derry. And as we all know now, down the line, we've been shafted, and nothing's ever going to. Them soldiers are all going to get off. Soldier F will get off. Jared Donaghy's kiss will never be revamped again. We all have to suffer that pain, which is going to be with me for not only John. That Jared Donaghy was somebody that I never knew, but I can't forget John and his death were a double blow to me, and it's only literally and even as in, I still haven't got over the insult that was added. We even Lord Saville hinging his decision on one word, probably. He probably had nail bombs, and then they even go on in and say, I can't rule out the possibility that they were planted by the RUC, and it's still nothing will ever come of it. Nothing. It's a wee bit of a rant, isn't it?
No, no.
I mean, you have actually gone around the world with this film as well too. That's the other thing I wanted to say before I open the floor. You know, this film has actually travelled, and you actually travelled with it. Like Geraldine, you went to New York, was it?
I went to New York and I couldn't believe how many people were interested in it. To me, Bloody Sunday changed my life. I was only 18. I went in the march because I wanted to go in the march, but it wasn't because I was political or anything. I wanted to be there because at that time in the world, there was great change. In America, there was Martin Luther King, there was the students in France, and they had marched, and the governments had to take notice, and they did. But I enjoyed the march. But when I went to America, I couldn't believe what it was like in America. But it did change my life. I didn't talk about it. I was traumatized by it. After Wordtree, I mind crying my heart out and going up to my mother. And I says, Mommy, I tried my best. She says, you told the truth. Should it take 10 years or 50 years to come out, they can't sweep it onto the carpet. You will get justice. And I always held on to that because my mother says it. And we've got justice to a certain degree. But with the trauma, I got married to Hugo. We got married 4 months later. I never told my children for 20 years until Margaret Doherty came and asked me to help with a programme that was on Hidden History. And I didn't trust journalists. Stephen will vouch for that. When he came to my door, I said, who are you, what are you at, and what are you doing? I'm going to be honest with you, you got no easy time at the start because I was suspicious of every journalist because I know what I seen that day. I knew I was telling the truth. And within a day, they were saying they were nail bombers. Wordtree says the same. But they weren't. They were all innocent. And most of them was my peers. John Young was one of my best friends. Loved dancing, loved the women, and had plenty of them because they ran after him. He was so funny. Jim Ray he was wild smart, we thought, compared to us, because he was thinking on a different wavelength, but he was great crack too. So I missed a lot of them, and we lost a lot of our friends. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that certainly comes across, you know, in the film. I have lots of questions, of course, I can keep us here for the rest of the night, but look, I mean, it's been a great turnout for this film, and I'm sure maybe, you know, because we've got all of these here, probably could be for the last time all in the one space together. So, look, if you've got a sort of burning question, you can get this, you can have this mic.
It's a question for Jimmy, really. I know that nearly everybody in the area was talked to and interviewed to build up that research for the film, but it's just that I was copying those scenes in the Saracens or in the bars when you had the powers all talking together. Did you talk to them, or how did you come about? You know, did you actually were those their words, or or was it your words?
There was, cheers. There was a paratrooper who I met. I think it'd be obvious from the film who it was, and you know. But I actually met him in Heathrow Airport, and he was such a. He was here on the day. He did not fire one shot. He's one of the bravest men I've ever met in my life. And he came to Heathrow Airport. We stayed in Heathrow Airport. I spent the entire day with him over in Heathrow Airport. And he told me everything that he saw, you know, and everything he did and what they did, you know. And that was all based on him, on his story, you know.
We can alternate it. I'll ask one, and people can ask one if they want. You know? Oh, yeah.
Okay, so well, Marty will take it when there's nothing coming and just incubate your question. Alana?
A sports statement. I was student nurse at the time. Can you hear this?
Oh, we can hear you.
I was student nurse not in the Galvin at the time of Bloody Sunday. and I was on the Order of Malta, so we did first aid duties all over the place, you know, maybe football matches or different things. But on that day, we went to, we were in the march, so I was walking down with some other people, and then when we got to Glenfadda Park, the shooting all started, and I was going from one patient that was injured to the other. The one was dead, and it was like it still brings back terrible memories to me even to this day. Yeah.
Thanks, Alana. I'll give it back to you there.
Yeah, I do think obviously you have captured the trauma. You know what I mean? I mean, in some ways, your character, is subdued. You know, it's kind of holding it in. You know, and obviously it comes out at the when you're holding the coffin. You know, and you're talking. I was looking for you. Was looking for you. Which is a real dairy thing that as well too, saying that I was looking for you, and then of course Geraldine's, you know, you know, sort of just how did you fall apart? Have you watching people all around you being shot and dying, and particularly what happened to Barney McGuigan, and how the difference would have been if somebody had been able to just hold him back, he would have lived the rest of his life, you know, and just that sort of life or death moment. In my mind, the end of the film to me is like as if you're in Schindler's List or something. You know? Do you know where the Nazis are just offing people and kids are being killed and this sort of stuff. So for me, like that takes a special type of bravery actually to put that on screen because we are so used to seeing portrayals of Northern Ireland where obviously the Celtic brothers can't get on with one another, when they butcher one another, and you know one side's bad, the other side's always trying maybe try to outdo them. There's no context. There's no context. But in this film, obviously, you went, you know, out at the very beginning with context. You didn't just want to, it seemed to me anyway, want to just tell the bloody sort of story. You wanted to basically give people a feeling of what was it like to be a Catholic in Derry growing up in the late 60s. You know, your peers as well too, because obviously the people on screen would have been the same age as you were at the time, you know. So I think it'd be nice to hear you say something about that, you know, because obviously people think you're giving a history lesson or something, or, but if you don't have context, then how will you ever get inside the human beings that you're trying to put on screen?
Uh, they even the shoes, you know the way the sole is coming away and on his shoe, that was me at that time. I was skint, you know, but everything. The the big there was a huge scene I wanted kept in, wasn't there? And it was the fact that the contents of the gut are read out, and everybody had Sunday dinner, meat and two veg, the stomach contents were exactly the same, and they'd be my stomach contents too, I was looking at the victims and seeing my brothers and friends, that's so in a way that association was easy for me. 72, I'd be 21. I remember looking at a black and white TV screen as it all unfolded, and I remember seeing a British Army officer talking and a parish priest talking, and I know who I believed immediately. So,
Anybody? Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Mine's is just a short one. It's to Jimmy as well. I'm just wondering, did you face any sort of resistance from the establishment once the word got out that you were going to make this movie? Was there anyone trying to shut you down or anything, or any sort of pressure on you to paint things in a certain light?
I don't. Maybe that's the question best. I think it's best. I think it's best answered by Stephen. But as far as I'm aware, no, no.
No, there wasn't. We didn't experience anything like that. Working with Channel 4, we lost certain scenes in the film. Some of that was due to budget issues. We intended to shoot in Blackburn flats that were very similar to Rossville flats. So that was a loss in terms of the film because the Rossville flats stand loom large in Derry of that time. So we had flats in Blackburn which were exactly the same, and we had to cut it because of budget. So we lost a couple of other scenes like that. But in terms of pressures from outside, we didn't experience anything. No, no.
I just, when you're on about pressure, you mightn't be aware 027. 027 was the radio operator. He was the fella that gave evidence, and while he was giving evidence in England, 6 or 7 of his mates broke into his flat, and because he wasn't there, they bit the shit out of the caretaker of the flat, and as much as him give him that message from us, he was the only one that tried to come forward, as you seen him on the scene there. But he was known as 027. If you read it up, you'll see him.
The only other thing I'd like to say is I found this amazing, and there was a scene in the drama. The Derry Journal put its price up by 16% immediately after Bloody Sunday. You were all going to buy the Derry Journal. They put the price up.
But I also wouldn't forget that 027 was a courageous man. That I don't know how anyone could do that, stand against their whole army and speak like that. I just find the courage of that man amazing. You know, and if we hadn't got him, we wouldn't have got the second inquiry.
Um,
He was part of the gang. He was in Margaretton. He shot the Peter. He shot somebody before he came to Derry. Well, it was a roadblock he was involved in, and they were involved in a shooting, and he opened fire. So he was no angel, Helen, like, you know what I mean? I don't think angels join the Paris. Well, thank God.
right. Haven't seen the film a few times over the past 20 years. It's amazing what an emotional punch it still gives you, and you know, and how you feel it so emotionally. And the other thing I thought today was what a fantastic creative endeavour it was in the community, Stephen and Jim, to be able to garner so many people to get involved. That was a big sign of trust as well, and that you would do justice to the story. And I really like the way the young family, all the complexities of feelings and even sometimes contradictions of feelings came through the young family. So, Jimmy, what made you decide to, in a way, nearly focus the story a lot on the young family, and what did the young family think about that?
Okay. I'll join the big squad after this.
It's a story we picked basically because it touched all the main areas. You know, that story took us to some really key areas. You know, that's the reason we picked it, I think.
Well, it came as big as a shock to me as what it did to everybody else. But our story highlighted, was tied onto everybody else's story at the same time. You know, it was our family, but everybody else then all fell on the line, and we just happened to. Well, Jimmy picked our story as connecting, the big connection for it. All right, but we were glad that it's done, and now if we can only find now a bit of peace and let this heal sore, but it'll never heal.
All right, folks, how's it going? I really appreciate your time tonight. The stuff you've dealing with, I can't even picture. I was due on the Good Friday Agreement, so hearing your stories and stuff like this here, I can't even imagine what you went through. This is actually a question for you on the left. It's what was it like being a Scouser? Because like you talked about being a, a patriot, which I really appreciate you coming out and saying, because they're very brave things to say. But over the last, I would say over the last while, Scousers and Derrywans, they're like twin flames. Like you could walk down any street in Liverpool and see somebody from Derry. What was the reception like in Liverpool when the film was released? Do you know?
I think I got an awful lot of support from friends and family, you know, and it was well reviewed, wasn't it? It was really well reviewed, and that's all I could say, really. You know, it, as a film, it went down well. Everybody drew the right conclusions, I think. You know, and that's all. But the main thing was when it was shown here. You know. If everybody turns around and says it's crap here, we're finished, you know what I mean? So that was the main thing for me, you know.
How's it going, everyone? Could I just ask two questions, one to Leo and Geraldine? And the first question is around, like a lot of people in this town will have known the truth of Bloody Sunday. And like what Geraldine, your mum said, that someday this will come out. I suppose it's important to put in the context that this is 8 years pre-Savile, that this might have been the first time that an outsider validated your experiences and brought truth to maybe a wider audience. So maybe what that experience was like. We know what June the 15th, 2010 looked like in terms of the report being released, but maybe this is kind of an early on kind of validation of that. And then maybe a second question then for Jimmy around I suppose maybe to put in context the bravery of what you did, and to an earlier question around that there was no legal challenges to this, that again it was a preempt of Savile, that you went and you went for the truth regardless of the consequences. And was there a sense of vindication later on then when Savile did come out?
Great questions. Well, in June, that was a great day, but far from being elated, I was really sad. And I was sad because you grieve for your friends, because you thought, would they have been married? Would have been doing this? And it was a life wasted and taken. And I remember being very, very sad that day. Happy and sad. Happy for the families, because I have never seen such a group of people with such determination and tenacity. And that's what got them through. And the love of their family, one that was killed, and the searching for truth and getting the truth. Now, Wordry nearly annihilated me, and I mind having gone up to the Bloody Sunday Trust because I heard that there was going to be cameras looking at you when you were giving evidence. You don't know how I felt when Wordry more or less rubbished my evidence. But being naive, I thought everybody thought that I had let them down. And Savile vindicated me and vindicated the truth. So that day I felt both happy and sad. And I think some of the families felt that too, because they could openly grieve. Because up to then, the fight was tell the truth, and they lived with a loss. And then after that, they had won for their relative. And I found it that day. You know?
Well, first of all, I have to say from my heart, I'm looking at Geraldine here, and you seen the film, and that girl, trauma was not the word for what she had to go through. I mean, she was involved, Gilmore, Barney McQueen, horrendous, and I'm glad she's here today, tonight, because she doesn't do that much. She came because I came, and I came because she came. So, as far as Savile was concerned, now, my own personal opinion was high. We thought everything was on the right track, but the balloon, the balloon was along and busting after that, and we were left the way we started out, hoping for no justice. They never, and the worst thing about it, there never be no justice. There never be no justice, which is the saddest. But I'm glad she's here. And she's going to say she's glad I'm here.
I'm glad you're there.
Yeah. The thing they turn around and say is it's polemic, you know, but it's not polemic. It's just that the incident itself, the killings themselves, were absolutely gross. You know, they were so horrific that any portrayal is going to seem polemical, and it's not. It's factual, and we were vindicated totally, weren't we? So, yeah.
I was told there's a speaker up here at the back. Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for bringing this film here tonight. As a survivor and one of the wounded on Bloody Sunday, I thank you on behalf of all my friends that can't thank you, who are not here any longer, the ones that died, and the ones that died since then. It's a very factual film. Unfortunately, when Widgery and these people had their inquiries, and Wilford got his OBE from the Army law supersedes all military law, and I was never under any illusion that Soldier F or any of the killers would ever be put in prison, which we all wanted, justice. But because Army law supersedes civilian law, and any action by the powers which medals are awarded, they can no longer be charged with any crime in connection with that operation. Unfortunately, I came back to testify to the Saville inquiry from Germany. I flew back and I heard Lord Saville and the top barristers talking about me on the plane before I even landed in Aldergrove, about the terrorist who was up the next day to give evidence, the hard man. And I said to my solicitor, there's some guy up tomorrow, God help him. He says, that's you're talking about? Because I was interred myself a year after Bloody Sunday. But the point was that when I arrived in the Guildhall, I was held in a cell for 5.5 hours and refused. They arrested me on behalf of the inquiry and held for 5.5 hours. And when the door finally opened, Mr. Madden was walking past, and I threw up my arms and I said, help. And he came in and rescued me from that cell. But there was 4 barristers, and they produced my internment order that day. And they ordered me to come back 3 months later. I didn't come back. They came to my house in Germany 3 times. I was working and living in Germany then. But the point was, 18 months ago, I was going up to give evidence against Soldier F in Bishop Street, and 2 young detectives, 30 years of age, came to my flat and that morning at 10 o'clock and told me that they found a fingerprint of mine 49 years ago, and that they asked me to explain how that fingerprint became on some arms dump or other that they found on the water side, and I told them I had no recollection of it. But it was to intimidate me from going to Bishop Street that day to give evidence against Soldier F. I didn't go in fact, I didn't go out the door for 3 weeks because of that. But we know that we will never see any of these killers who are still at large do a day in prison. However, there has been civil actions taken, and what I suggest is the 190 million that was paid to the solicitors, barristers, judges, and the inquiry. However, the victims got 2% of that money. 98% of that money was paid to solicitors, barristers, judges, recorders, and the likes. if only a fraction of that money was used or donated by those barristers and solicitors who made so much money out of this Savile inquiry, was donated to take a civil action against Soldier F, that would be some token of justice at least, because civil actions are all the rage these days, you know. There's no chance of getting a criminal conviction against Soldier F or any of the killers. He shot someone in Belfast just a few months later, the same Soldier F. But so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Is there a last question or two before we wrap it up? Because I know it's a Friday night too, and people probably want to get back. But if you still have a final.
Just sorry, just a quick question. Why did you have two different scenes of the shootings? There was one at the beginning, wasn't there? It was at the end. I think maybe we didn't get the detail of it because we're sitting here, so it was a bit like, whoa, it's, you know, too close. But why were there two different things?
I think it's because I spent a day with that soldier, you know, and that's the, you know, like if an Irish person tells you a version of Bloody Sunday, it's an Irish person telling you a version of Bloody Sunday. When a British soldier tells you a version of Bloody Sunday that damns the British Army, you pay attention, don't you? You know, and so I think that was the reason. I can't remember, Stephen, but I suspect that was the reason. Yeah.
There was also the fact that we kind of wanted, we thought, we thought that the audience would switch off if they saw, as soon as they saw the killings. So we keep the killings to the end, and therefore they watch the whole inquiry, they see the cover up, and then they see the killings. Whereas as soon as you see the killings, this is propaganda, switch off. Whereas we keep them, hold them back, and then.
The ending of the film then is just like sort of catastrophic.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
Just one. It's me again. Just one. They keep on about this £250 million that cost to run Savile. When you sit down and look at it, it cost 26 years of trouble and £600 million and damage. So it was only a drop in the ocean, Savile.
So do you want to sum it up? I just think
Yeah.
Does
anybody want to kind of say a last word? Because we have a little thing at the end too as well we want to do before we go. Because this, I suppose, like, you can't wait another 10 years, do it again. I think this is a moment where, the 50th anniversary, I think is I suppose the biggest moment really since Savile anyway, at least since the public apology and whatever like that. And we mightn't get a chance to revisit this sort of moment again. So if you want to say anything.
I would like to thank my husband, my father, my mother, and my family for helping me through the first couple of years because it was horrendous. Because you didn't want to say how you were feeling. I know now I was suffering from PSTD after it, but you wouldn't have talked about that then, and people still don't talk about it now. But it doesn't go away. It's with you all the time. You just learn eventually to cope. But I couldn't have done it without my husband, my mother especially, and my father. Thank you.
Can I just ask you, how did you feel, just to go follow on from this man's question, how did you feel when you first saw the film, first time you saw it complete? Did you think this is another step, on the road to something?
I did, but I felt it got the psychic of the people.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of the families, like we all lived within streets of one another. You seen what happened on Bloody Sunday in the funerals, but after it, how the families had to cope. I was only a teenager, and most of the young fellas that was shot and killed were teenagers. Most of my friends were teenagers. We had a great life in Derry. We went dancing, we went to cafes, we went everywhere. That stopped after Bloody Sunday. So a lot of things was lost, but I think the film got the psychic of the people. And I thank Jimmy for that, because I felt it was the first time that where people were seeing my truth and the town's truth, and the people were believing it. It's why when you're called a liar by the system, I was never involved with police. I was never involved with anything. I was just an ordinary teenager. I actually think that so naive. Wardry would make it better. He would say the soldiers done this because Dad brought us up to believe in law and justice too, and truth. And when that happened, like, what do you go to? That's the values that you had. I just stopped talking. Like I say, I have a family of 4. None of them knew for 20 years I was even involved. That's how dramatized I was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of my reflections, I'd probably go to where Leo touched on, which is the justice question. For me, I believe that at the outset that Bloody Sunday was a planned operation. It was sanctioned. It was sanctioned at the highest level. There was no smoke and gun in terms of evidence, but everything that we uncovered, everything that's since been revealed, points to, and in my mind confirms, that it was a planned operation. And Savile actually got us closer to the truth, much closer than Widgery ever did. But Savile actually just came up with 9 lowly soldiers and 1 officer. And they were the people responsible. And then it was down to 1 soldier, Soldier F, and now it's no soldiers. So nobody is held accountable, no senior figure, no military, the upper echelons walk free, the British military establishment walk free. So I think, for me, if the film makes a contribution to try and actually get at the truth and punch through that nonsense, then I think it does its job.
I always think about Widgery, the highest judge in the land with nowhere to go. He's an old man, total success in his life, and the only thing to think about is what people will think of him when he's dead, his reputation. And he destroyed all that. He must have known he was destroying it because the British Prime Minister asked him to, for the British establishment to be able to draw that from people. They must be so powerful, mustn't they?
Did you get your final word in there? Yeah. Okay, look, everybody, thanks so much for sitting through the film, obviously, which is an experience in itself. It takes a long time to get over, and then obviously being able to talk here to people. Just before, obviously, I thank everybody and whatever, and say night night or whatever. Look, we just wanted to do a little presentation here. Jim's got something up his sleeve.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's kind of part of yes, part of what Anne was saying. A lot of people in Derry remade the march for us, and the other film came out a week before ours, and they took the march before ours, so that scuppered we thought our plan to get enough people for the march, but people come out and supported it even though it was a wet day. And so we created this wee thing here, Jimmy, and you mightn't have seen it, so I wanted to give you one. Yeah. Inside it there's a poem by Lockie Morris about Sunday. Yeah. And I just thought you should have that. But then Lockie did a beautiful thing as well. It's one of my favourite pieces of his art, and it epitomised the relationship between the community and the state. An RUC Land Rover parked underneath the Roswell Flats, and somebody, if you pardon the French, fucked an old cooker out on top of it, and it's called the Flight of the Cooker, So that's for somewhere in Liverpool. Thank you very, and we really want to say you did a beautiful job for us, for this city, and you got the freedom of Liverpool. Well, unofficially you've got the freedom of this city.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Geraldine.
Thank you.
Leo, Jimmy,
Thank
and
you.
Stephen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.